So for the rest of this lesson, we are going to look at calculations with fractions, and we are not going to use our calculators. The reason we're practicing without calculators is that later on we're doing algebraic fractions, and of course you can't use a calculator to do algebra. Also, you still have one exciting test to go this year called a NAPLAN, and it has a non-calculator section. So you can't get away with using a calculator for all questions. So we're going to do a quick revision on how to do this. I know this is not new, so we should be able to go through it fairly fast. So for addition and subtraction of fractions with no calculator, what do we need to always have? If we're going to add or subtract fractions, what's the most important thing to have? A common denominator. Alright? So if it already had a common denominator, it's ridiculously easy. We're not going to do those, we're jumping straight to different denominators. So for example, if I had 2/3 plus 3/7. Okay? I can't add them as they are. I've told you you can't reach for your calculator, so you're going to have to find a common denominator. What would it be for this question? 21, because 3 and 7, the smallest number they both go into is 21. So if I turn this to 21, how do I do that? Multiply by what? 7. If I multiply the bottom by 7, I must also multiply the top by 7. So that's going to become what as a fraction? 14 over 21. The second fraction, what am I going to multiply top and bottom by? 3, that's correct. So 3 times 3 is 9, 3 sevens are 21. Working down the page, if I add them now, the denominators are the same, so I'm just going to add the numerator, which is 14 plus 9, which is 23. Now that is an improper fraction. You do not need to make it mixed unless the question tells you to. So I am very happy for you to leave your answer as 23 on 21. So if the question says write as a mixed numeral, make sure you actually do it. But if it doesn't say that, stop. You don't need to do any more work. That's clearly the correct answer. If I did say give the answer as a mixed numeral, what would the answer be? 1 and 2 on 21. But remember, we only do that extra step if it tells us to. It's not something that we need to worry about too much, because the main time we'll be doing this is with algebra, and with algebra we always leave it as improper. Okay, so we don't need to stress too much about making it mixed. Just for completeness, let's do one example with a minus. So say I had 5 on 12 minus 3 on 18. What am I going to do here? Why is that a really dumb question that I just made up on the top of my head? Someone going to be brave enough to say why that's a dumb question?
Because it's hard to find a common denominator.
It is hard. That's not why it's a dumb question. That's why it's a good question, because it was going to be hard to make a common denominator, but I've done something really silly. What did I do? Any idea? Look at this, 3 on 18.
That can be simplified.
It can be simplified. What can it be simplified to?
2, 1, 6.
Yeah, and that's going to make the question a lot easier, isn't it? So if your teacher is silly enough to write a question like that, you could try and find a common denominator for 12 and 18, which is going to require a little bit of brain effort. Or you could just say, oh, Mrs. Andrews is a bit silly. We could just rewrite the question as 5 on 12 minus 1/6, and that's going to be much easier. Okay? Because now finding common denominator is really easy. What's the common denominator for those two? 12. Much easier. Okay? So this will remain as 5 on 12. And this will become, that's a really dodgy looking 2. Let's see if we can get rid of that and that. And make it prettier again. 5 on 12 minus 2 on 12, which is what? 3 on 12. Am I done? Why not?
It can be simplified more.
It can be simplified. What does it simplify to? A quarter. Well done. Okay, so sometimes you do have really yucky numbers to find common denominators to, like 12 and 18. This question you didn't because you could simplify first. Alright, so that was a silly question. So that's plus and minus. What about multiplication? Who remembers the rules? For fractions, what's the special rule for multiplication? Do I need common denominators?
No.
No. Multiplication is probably the easiest one for fractions because I just times the tops times the bottoms and I'm done. So multiplication is the easiest one. So if I said 4 on 7 times 12 on, I don't know, 5, I just times the tops together and times the bottoms together. That's it. So 4 times 12 is 48. 7 times 5, 35. Really, really easy. What's the rule for division?
We need to get the reciprocal of the last one and times them together.
That's correct. So instead of multiplying by the fraction, okay, so instead of dividing by the fraction, we're going to multiply by its reciprocal. What does the word reciprocal mean? Who remembers? Some blank looks. Reciprocal means you flip the number, basically. Okay, so if I had 4 over 7, the reciprocal would be 7 over 4. So reciprocal means to invert the fraction. So if I had 8 over 9 divided by 3 over 7, I would change that fraction to, instead of divide by 3/7, if it's going to be the same as timesing by 7 on 3. Is everyone happy with that? Do you remember doing that? So dividing by a fraction is same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So it's really important you remember it's the second thing you're changing. It's what you're dividing by that you change to times the reciprocal. Once you've done that, you're back to that multiplication, which is super easy. Times the top, 7 eighths and 3 nines. And you're done. That's all we had to remember. Now, I do not require you to do big, long, horrible things with 10 different fractions in it. This is just a basic skill that we need to refresh our memories on to prepare for non-calculator tests and for algebra. Okay, so I'm not going to require you to do heaps of them. I'm going to pick a few from exercise 1D. You're going to open your book to that page now and we'll get started.